We have a legacy and history in investing in emerging markets, and we've really seen tremendous change over the last 30 years.
Emerging markets was really looked at as something which was behind the developed markets. There were very, very few markets where we could actually invest.
Then we invested in maybe less than 10 countries. Today we can invest in over 50. When you look at the growth in emerging markets over that period, we've seen transformation both in terms of the kind of economies, the kind of companies we invested in, and because of what we did 30 years ago, we were seen as pioneers in investing in emerging markets.
The emerging market asset class today is of considerable higher quality than any time in my investing career. I've been investing in emerging markets for the last 25 years and have seen substantial change in the asset class over that period. Yet outdated perceptions of the asset class still persist, and we believe there's a danger of investors missing out on some of the world's fastest growth opportunities and systematically under-allocating to this exciting asset class. 2 or 3 decades ago, emerging markets were mostly about producing low-cost commodities and providing them to the resource-hungry West, or indeed countries were seen as a cheap source of labour for manufacturing and export to the West, and there seemed to be very little value add taking place on a local basis. Now we find there's a tremendous opportunity in both domestic consumption and technology, world-class technology in this asset class that we believe many investors still don't fully appreciate.
In fact, in many cases, we find that emerging markets are really ahead of the developed world in terms of the kind of goods and services they produce. It's also not about penetration levels, because in many emerging markets, goods and services are penetrated to a very large extent. It's not about export of materials and commodities, although that's a very, very strong point for emerging markets, but it's really not about that anymore. It's all about the change in the consumerism within the emerging markets, as well as the technology transformation which is taking place in emerging markets.
Also, when we look at the development path of the asset class, many people would think that emerging markets would simply follow the development path of the developed world. And as the developed world went down the technology route, the emerging markets would follow that same development path. However, what we're witnessing on a regular basis is that many emerging market companies are leapfrogging that traditional development path through the use of technology and innovation. And as a result, we find a wide range of very exciting businesses to invest in on our clients' behalf. These range from e-commerce, where there's still low levels of e-commerce penetration in a number of economies. We invest in a number of disruptors that are changing industry landscapes across a range of industries, including banking, food retail, travel booking, and food delivery. Next, we believe that the next wave of growth will be data-driven. That involves cloud computing, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, meaning the connected home, and 5G technology that will offer a range of growth opportunities that many of us can't yet conceive.
So I would say, even though the markets have transformed, the economies have transformed, something that we still hold on to very strongly is something that hasn't changed, which is our local presence, our global perspective, our network of offices, having people on the ground in some 20 offices around the world. So a very local, fundamental approach is something that's been central to what we've delivered for investors over the last 30 years, and that is something that will continue.
Because we look at the next 30 years or so, we still see the opportunity to be tremendous in these marketplaces as these middle classes continue to grow at rates faster than the developed economies, and we're seeing new technology opportunities. And our goal is to make sure we continue to have the best and brightest with the strongest resources in the most locations around the globe.
投资一定有风险，基金投资有赚有赔，申购前应详阅公开说明书。